I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. All right, and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
And I'm Chris Soucy.
And we have a very fun episode for you today, because we're going to talk about everybody's favorite demonic toy, the Ouija board. Woohoo!
All right. We actually had a really interesting question come in from Isaiah, but we met him. He went to he came to the Savannah Underground.
He came to one of our first shows. Yeah,
I think he's he was just awesome. It's Southern Spectres. It's Southern Spectres.
Yep.
But he is just absolutely he was the nicest guy. I think he brought his kid, if I can remember it correctly. It was really, really cool. So let's go ahead and listen to the message that he sent us.
Hey guys, this is Isaiah from the Southern Spectre podcast. Just wanted to take a minute to tell you I really love the show, love the camaraderie, love the chemistry that Madison and Chris that you guys have together. Really enjoyed it so far. With that being said, I actually have a question for you both. Me and my wife, a few years ago, we actually found at the bottom of her grandmother's chest of drawers, we actually found a Ouija board that had been nailed to the underside of this thing. So the face of the Ouija board was pointing down toward the floor. Why would anyone do this? Aside from trying to level out the chest of drawers, any idea why anyone would do this? You guys keep up the good work, and hashtag ghost heroin, hashtag just say no. Y'all stay spooky.
All right. Thank you so much, Isaiah. Y'all check out his podcast. Seriously.
Hashtag ghost heroin. Oh, yeah. God, is this our brand now?
So that should jumpstart a conversation about Ouija boards. What do y'all think?
Oh, boy.
That is a loaded subject. There are so many avenues to go down. And I think that the very first thing to be said about a Ouija board is that it was derived and created and entirely manufactured in the late 1800s. It is a product to begin with. What it grew into is a totally different story. But a lot of people will try to predate the commercialization of it. But it was a commercial product from the very beginning. It was never derived from other things. It was a little bit of scrying, a little bit of automatic writing, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But ultimately, it was in the late 1800s or mid to late 1800s. There was a craze in America regarding spiritualists and speaking to the dead, and so it was a very common thing to have little parlor meetings with friends and conduct seances and have mediums come to your house, or go to a sold-out show where mediums would pull spirits out of the air, and I'd say 99% of them all were debunked. It was a huge period of time where you were capitalizing on this pseudoscience, this pseudo construct, and then comes along this board game that was brought into the idea that people could, you talk to the dead. And it wasn't oogity boogity, because they weren't oogity boogity about it. They were like, this is a legitimate tool for this cause, but it was always an entertainment. It was always something that was meant to be entertaining. And I want to say even like the Milton Bradley version that you can get, it's like good for ages 8 and above.
Yeah.
It's meant to sort of feed on our individual interest in the paranormal and the supernatural in an innocuous way, in a way that doesn't necessarily inherently mean evil. That being said, don't use a Ouija board. I really feel strongly against utilizing a Ouija board, and not for inherent evil purposes. It's just, it comes with a lot of caveats that are imperceptible. because the idea that the world, the veil, has a door, and on the other side of the door are all these spirits that are trying to get into our world. The Ouija board's like a lockpick. You know, it's a tool that these spirits can have the sensation of access. So there's a lot to unpack with the Ouija board, to be frank. But we come to this interesting idea of putting a Ouija board in a place that cannot be seen, in a curious configuration, and I've actually experienced a few instances similar to this, which is basically the idea of starving a spirit, ensuring that a spirit cannot get the attention that would give it the strength to do damage. Because I think we talked about it in our last podcast that sometimes spirits will attach themselves to objects. If a spirit attaches itself to a Ouija board, it's a very powerful entity. And the thing that I always hear people go, well, burn it.
Oh,
and it's like, don't do that.
No.
Don't burn it, because the concept is the Ouija board is now the body, and if you destroy the body, the spirit is released. It has access. It's given a way in. So the best thing you can do is hold a burial for it. You know, go through the process of burial, because we have enforced the idea of burial as a place to rest a spirit, to put a spirit to rest. So when you are dealing with possessed items, when you're dealing with these things, oftentimes it's not about doing a battle with it, it's put it to rest. Try to do the rituals that we have reinforced for pretty much the entirety of the human experience, that a funeral puts a spirit to rest and puts a spirit in its place, the grave. So that is a common way to approach it. Gotcha. So by putting it somewhere that it cannot be seen or used, you're basically having a spirit not able to access the human life energy. You're basically starving it. And it's possible that there was a very powerful and very detrimental spirit attached to this board to go to such extremes.
Absolutely.
You're talking about Isaiah's board.
Isaiah's board,
Okay.
yeah. We're talking about Isaiah's board.
Okay.
To go to such extremes as to nail it to the bottom underside of a drawer, which is something that, you know, in spy movies, that's where you hide the microfiche. You know, it's a place to be unseen and a place to be undisturbed. So yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I would definitely say I have some thoughts about multiple aspects of that. I completely agree with trying to put it in a place where it can't be found, because Ouija boards are notorious for, if you throw it away, it'll come back. It just shows back up. It's happened to so many people because it's now got something attached to it. What I find interesting is the nailing to it. So instead of just hiding it, you went through with the act of piercing it, trying to kill the board. So a lot of times, you know, it's that concept of using the silver dagger or whatever to kill a vampire. It's kind of that same concept, using silver to kill something evil.
Yeah, maybe we need to have Isaiah on the show to talk a little bit more about this, because I actually have a question for him. You know, how many nails were in the Ouija board? Was it 3? Because it would make sense that it was either 1 or 4. But if it was 3, maybe that was more of a...
If it was 5,
of a malevolence.
That's if it's 12, there's a lot of variations on it. And were they copper?
Yeah.
Were they iron?
Exactly.
You know, the fact that certain metals have properties and certain beliefs to bind and hold. The act of piercing and attaching something, you know, that is pretty telling as well.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even in witchcraft and spell work, to make like a witch's jar, you use rusty nails to pierce whatever kind of negative energy is coming at you. So, you know, it's also like a protective measure, you know, to say if something is trying to get through this Ouija board, it's going to meet nails first.
Right, it binds it.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so if y'all had to guess what happened here, Just if you had to just give your your best guess,
It sounds like, to me at least, somebody bought a Ouija board as a fun activity, as it always starts that way, because they're so readily accessible. And if it was his grandmother or one of their grandmothers, especially in the 50s, I mean, it was, like Chris was saying, it was such a common thing to have these mediums and whatnot. Like even I Love Lucy did an episode where they did a seance. It was so common for entertainment that people were like, let's have a dinner party and let's do something crazy.
Yeah.
Let's pull out the Ouija board. But a lot of times people get so attached to the Ouija board that they use them as their spirit boards. I've heard people refer to them as, it's not a dangerous Ouija board, it's a spirit board. My spirit guides talk to me through this. It's still the same thing, and usually it is never something good that is trying to keep your attention so consistently.
Yeah.
So more than likely, somebody did that, thought they found a spirit, that was trying to guide them through their life's purpose or whatever. And they didn't realize what they were encountering until it got too intense. And so maybe they sought out the, expertise of a person who knows about the paranormal or is a medium or something, and they gave them advice to do this.
It does sound like folk magic. It does sound like regional, how to handle this kind of incident. Because I've actually heard about nailing dolls to wood. As a part of as a measure to keep the doll spirit from going anywhere, it does like play out very intriguingly, because famously Ouija boards started getting a really bad rap in around the 70s, and it was primarily from the movie Exorcist, because the movie Exorcist actually suggested that the access to the girl, the child, was through a Ouija board. She talked to Captain Jack or
Captain Jack Sparrow.
I don't know.
Johnny Depp.
It was she contacted Johnny Depp, and it's all over from there. It does explain the overacting, but back to the point at hand. Even that was based on William Blattley, who wrote the book of The Exorcist. He wrote it based on an actual exorcism in the 50s. And there was this concept of the Ouija board being something that could conceivably be used by malevolent forces to gain access to a person, because it is, when you open a conversation with a spirit, you are connecting and you're becoming connective to a spirit.
Didn't I kind of remember that? Like, it's based in Washington, D.C. The movie is based in Washington, D.C., or takes place in D.C., because that's where the actual exorcism, the demonic possession took place.
Yeah, it was Ronald or Roland Doe.
Yeah.
Roland. Okay.
Roland Doe. Although I don't know that's his real name.
Yeah, exactly. But that's who it was supposed to be based off of.
Yeah.
And with that notion comes this interesting thing that once it's in the zeitgeist, it colors our perception of how to interact with it. Once we start thinking it's evil, then the trend is, people underestimate, I say this all the time, people underestimate the power of the human mind and the power of the human vessel as a conduit for these things. Which came first, the ghost or the ghost story? If you tell a ghost story, very likely people will experience the ghost, regardless of whether or not it exists. It becomes a piece of our understanding. We fear it, and if we fear it, fear is a type of faith. If you have faith in it, it can manifest. It has the ability, which gives us tremendous power that we underappreciate and misuse all the time.
So, with Ouija boards, how do they work? I know that there might be some people listening that are like, well, I know about Ouija boards, but I don't know how they work.
Sure. All it's really doing is it's just acting as a vessel to open that portal between you and the spiritual world, that veil. It's just acting as just the opening. So pretty much you're putting your intentions into this board, which you can do with a lot of different objects. It doesn't have to just be Ouija boards, but Ouija boards have become a part of pop culture of being the one thing that you know for a fact that everybody knows can get you into the spirit world. So pretty much when you put your intentions in by putting the planchette down and are like, all right, I want to talk to Marilyn Monroe. I want to talk to whoever, that is just opening the gateway, essentially. And that's when spirits can come forward and they can start doing that. But people also don't do the protective measures when it comes to communing with the spirit world. There's a lot of steps you should do before that, but because it comes in a board game box and you can buy it at Target, people don't think like, well, maybe I should do a cleansing ceremony and a protection ceremony and things like that. Maybe I should call forward my spirit guides as a protection barrier. It's things that you would normally do in witchcraft when you're doing spell work or communing or things like that. But
what I meant was, no, that was awesome. But what I meant was, like, if we had a Ouija board right now, how do we start?
You put the planchette down.
Okay.
Everybody touches it. So you're putting your energy into that planchette.
The planchette is the little glass.
No,
the oracle.
Yeah,
the oracle.
Yeah,
okay.
This thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That
thing.
But yeah, so you put that down. Everybody touches it.
Okay.
And that's putting like however many people's energy into that. And by saying, like, I would like to contact whoever, that opens that gate. That's how it works.
Okay. And that gate is like open now for anything.
Yes.
Is the idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's not a telephone.
Yeah.
So when you say, I'd like to talk to Marilyn Monroe, the chances of contacting Marilyn Monroe are about the same as trying to contact Marilyn Monroe.
Yes.
It's very, the other side is not a directory. You don't get to just choose who you talk to. Whatever's closest, whatever's strongest, whatever has the ability to communicate, that's what's going to come through. And it's always worth noting, like on the opposite side of that is a lot of people believe that by putting your hands on this planchette and by moving it around, you are actually, you yourself, your body is transmitting intention and concept. And if you wanted to go the debunker route, you are actually controlling it by not controlling it. You are actually uncovering subconscious conversation and material. You'll see a lot of people debunk tools that people use spiritually, like divining rods. You can hold a divining rod and you can will it to go whichever way you want, and people will say that's proof that it's not real, whereas you are the conduit, not the rods. You are the source, not the device. People want the device to be the source of it, and the device, whatever it is, Ouija board or any divination technique, is utilizing your energy, your power, your intent, and bringing it through. So some people are like, well, it's just your subconscious. It's like, well, does your subconscious have access to information that you don't? Absolutely. Absolutely it does. So is it supernatural? Maybe not. Maybe it's just high intuition. Maybe it's just something that you've packed away deep inside of you. But being that you open it up with the intent of talking to dead people, talking to spirits, talking to something from beyond, the idea that something from beyond is paying attention, that's pretty high. We're surrounded. We're always surrounded. We're inundated. If you know people who are sensitive or who can see, they will tell you. Spirits are everywhere. There is no getting away from it. They are all around us all the time. And if you try to contact them, there are many who are desperate to connect. And any attempt that you make to connect with them will be met with, connection.
Yeah. I do want to say, though, because a lot of people will say, like, well, I did a Ouija board and nothing happened. Like, I didn't contact anybody. It's just the same as any other form of divination. It is not a automatic thing where if I open this up, a ghost is going to show up. Ghosts can choose whether or not they want to communicate with you. And some people just give off the energy that ghosts or spirits or whatever entity is near you is like, I don't want to talk to them.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste my energy on them.
Sure.
But there are plenty of spirits that are like, please let me talk to them. Like Chris was saying, there's some that are so desperate. So if for some reason, you did have a Ouija board session and literally nothing happened, the planchette did not move, nothing occurred. It's the same way anytime you use a pendulum or this spirit rods or things like that. Sometimes things just don't come through.
So what makes a Ouija board so dangerous?
It's the intentions behind it. Because everybody knows that Ouija boards have been are used for contacting the dead in that way.
Okay.
And which makes it different from other forms of divination. So like with pendulums, it's for yes or no questions a lot of times. Tarot cards, you're trying to get a message from specific spirits, and usually what spirit you're trying to contact because it's usually your ancestors or your spirit guides.
And it uses symbology.
Exactly.
Symbols are far more or far less intrusive than full spelled out words.
Exactly.
Full spelled out sentences.
Yeah, and so with Ouija boards, a lot of times it's being used by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing when it comes to protecting themselves, which makes them vulnerable. And people underestimate the intellect of these malevolent spirits. They know, they've picked up on the fact that, people who are not super familiar with paranormal or any kind of psychic abilities or divination are oftentimes the ones using this, because people who do have more of the experience, they're not going to lean towards a Ouija board in general. And I think that's what makes them dangerous. It's not the actual board itself. It's the act of who's doing this and the intentions that they're putting into it. Because it is the case that a lot of times it's people who are so desperately trying to reach out to grandma, or they're in such a hurt place, in such a vulnerable place in their lives, that they're so susceptible to these evil forces.
That makes a lot of sense.
And you'll hear lots of stories about people who follow the obsession train, and will never use the Ouija board alone is a pretty standard rule. But the concept is that the spirit will tell you what you want to hear, will fill you with all kinds of information to keep that rapport and that connection going. Because the longer you connect with it, the more life and the more energy and the more force it has, and the closer to this world it gets. I always say that once a spirit gets through a board and is actually actively communicating, it will not let go of that board. And it'll say it's Marilyn Monroe. It'll say it's Elvis Presley. It'll say all these things. But the bottom line is it's probably just the same spirit who has the stranglehold on this form of communication. It's hogging the communication.
So you can't say goodbye and it says, okay, bye.
It won't let go.
No.
Because it's almost positive. It
on
can't
this side
come
of the
through. When you
veil.
say goodbye, you're actually shutting the communication down. But the next time you start, you're not getting a new spirit.
It's going to be the same one.
Oh.
It'll be that same
So what
spirit.
if you buy another Ouija board and then just don't nail that one to a dresser?
I mean,
or a
if
piece
you
of
want to
wood.
just spend all your money on
I was gonna
Ouija
say
boards,
that-
you could. In
that
theory.
makes sense. It would make sense that that a spirit would not
Yeah.
risk letting go of one thing to go to the next because it had success. As far as it's concerned, it got a meal, and if that's where the food comes from, it's not going to go over here where food might be.
Sure.
When it knows that food was here.
Absolutely.
And again, when you're trying to map out how do I get one over on the spirits, just don't.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is to remember that human beings are limited for a reason. Our experiences are limited for a reason, and those people who are gifted and those people who are born with insight, those are the people who are probably meant to communicate with the other side and meant to know things that other people don't. But for the average person, whenever you go traipsing into the unknown, it's easy to be fooled. A medium or a person who has a good contact with a spirit guide, they are given warnings. They are given insight. They know whether, they can ask, is that spirit bad? Is this thing bad? Us commoners, people, normies, no, we don't have that benefit to know whether a spirit has ill intent until it's too late, until there's damage. Yeah. And once there's damage, it's probably going to get worse and worse until something is done.
Yeah. And as somebody who does have that ability to kind of connect with spirits in that way, I have a very clear sense of when it's my spirit guides talking or my spirit guides coming through, because I have that connection with them, and I've had that connection with them my whole life. But for somebody who has no idea or can't feel these things, of course that's very confusing, And
just full of wonder.
Oh,
that's another
course.
thing is when you go through your life thinking that there's something else out there, and then you find some way of experiencing it. It's the heroin, ghost heroin.
Ghost heroin.
It's this. There's a whole world of experience that I am not privy to, but I have this way to get to it. I now know how to conjure the scenario where I get to see, feel, and have these things. But the danger is, without some form of spiritual guidance, you might be walking right into a trap. And I will say things like, "Oh, that's evil," or "Oh, that's dangerous." It's not that it is exclusively dangerous. It's that the threat of danger is high enough for me to say, "Don't do it." I will go on record every day, all day long. Don't do Bloody Mary. And that is just me saying, I don't think it's a good idea.
I see.
Because, by all rights, Bloody Mary is a childhood prank, but it is a type of divination. It is a type of calling. It is something where you are trying to see a spirit, and you're using a ritual that is widely accepted throughout the world as a way to communicate with a spirit. And like I said, spirits will adhere to the rules if it means having a little spotlight, having a little time. And so, whether you believe in the entity itself, you have to know that there is a desperation to be in this plane, the plane that we exist in. Just as desperate as we are to see into the next plane is desperate to see into ours. And there will be forces that want to take advantage of that and want to come out and make their, stake a claim in our world. I think we talked about Slender Man. Knowing that Slender Man does not exist, knowing that he was invented, knowing the person who invented Slender Man, does not change the fact that two girls tried to kill, or did kill, did they?
Yep, they did.
Two girls killed another girl
Slender Man,
trying to gain favor from Slender Man. And the danger there is we look at it and we say, that was delusion. I was like, no, that was faith. There's a difference.
That was them believing in
There's
that.
them believing in it.
Can you create your own Ouija board, just off of wanting to, having those intentions and trying to communicate with the dead just right there in your mirror or just anywhere?
Yes.
Just
I mean,
you
Absolutely.
can literally just create a portal anywhere you want.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's all about intention when it comes to things like that. If you want to see a spirit badly enough, you'll get something. Yeah.
And you hear it all the time with children.
That's what I was gonna say,
Children will talk
too.
to statues, and you'll see them talking to a statue and interacting, like taking pauses as if the statue's talking about it. They'll talk to their dolls. They'll talk to, they're in Poltergeist, the little girl uses a toy phone to talk to her grandmother. That is from stories that people tell about small children with toy phones talking to dead relatives.
Ooh.
It's a common thing.
That's creepy.
Because it has this kind of interesting notion of, well, that's a telecommunication device. The child at the very base understands that and thereby uses it to speak to past relatives or just relatives that are really far away, and some people even say that psychic links can be built that way. The child will get information from a relative who's really, really far away utilizing this plastic toy phone, and that's because they have imbued it with the ability to do so. So it's a scary concept, but we manifest so much of the spiritual access, but we don't have control over what comes through.
So my next question is, what's the difference between, I know the difference, I guess, but, when you open up a portal via a Ouija board, you might get a demon, you might get a really sweet spirit, you might even get your grandma, but you also might get a malevolent spirit. How do you know that you're talking to a demon or malevolent spirit, one that was alive but is just Jack the freaking Ripper?
You don't know.
You don't.
That's the problem. And so, especially if you are not tuned in to your abilities in that way where you can sense the energies of these different spirits, because they all have different, it's hard to explain in the way, but they all have different feeling to them. You can feel the different energies. You can feel when something feels off, when you're in touch with that. Like how I said, I can tell when it's my spirit guides in the room or if it's Jim, our house ghost. I can tell the difference between them because they have totally different energies.
Okay.
But if you're not tuned into that, they all seem the same to you. So it's like...
And they will lie.
And
they will
exactly.
lie and lie all day long.
And
that's a true danger, is they lull you into the sense that you are getting progress.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
But
creepy.
You may never know. And that's the scary thing is you might be talking to a benevolent spirit. You might be, but you also very much might not be.
Well, and that's where children also fall into the scary side of that too, is because they're way more open to anything already.
Sure.
But they're more likely to get the or malevolent spirit or the demonic side of entities because they're such a bright energy themselves.
They're such a bright light, absolutely.
And so
demons and malevolent spirits, they look for that.
Oh yeah,
because they want to take advantage of it because they have no conscience.
In general, with Ouija boards, because I think it's so commonly used by people who are not well versed in it, I'm sure that spirits have picked up on that pattern, because in my opinion, I think you're more likely to get a demonic or malevolent spirit with a Ouija board versus tarot cards, because tarot cards know you got to have at least a certain understanding of divination and things like that in the spirit world.
It requires translation.
Exactly.
It is not direct conduit. It's not a direct communication, even to the tarot reader. They are divining from symbology, and they are getting trend of energy, and that, if something malevolent is there, they can get that trend long before the spirit has any access.
I see.
So, because cards have been used to divine patterns of energy for a long time, since the 1400s, I think. So when you think about it, the difference between having a conversation with someone and having someone draw a picture, hand it to you, and then have you interpret it.
Yeah. It's
not direct. It's not words in your ear. It's not, that access point. And I always liken it to, what you have to imagine is that there is a black, never-ending darkness. And when you touch the planchette of a Ouija board, you're turning a light on. And that light is shining in this vast blackness. And all of these entities see the light, and they're just drawn to it. And they will come to that light, and they will fight tooth and nail to be the one to be at the light. And when you stop, when you say goodbye, the light doesn't just go away, it kind of dims. So ideally, putting it in a closet, hiding it under something, nailing it to the bottom of a drawer, lets that light dim until it's black. And then the spirit no longer has an idea of how to get into our world.
So when you put your hand on the planchette, like if all three of us were to do it right now, and then it started moving, and none of us were like, it was obviously a spirit of some type. How this might be a pretty technical question, but do you think that the spirit is actually holding it with you and moving it, or do you think it's like
No.
Oh.
So this is something that I think a lot of people get wrong. You physically have to move the planchette in order to start it.
What?
You
I thought it's supposed to move by itself.
No.
Well, at the very beginning.
You have to be moving it, and then when you ask questions, you are actually developing a sense for where it's going. And that's why when you're really playing it, it's a lot of, are you moving it? You're moving it, aren't you? Yeah, you're moving it. I know you're moving it. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you're relying on a subconscious recognition of energy.
Okay.
Now, that is not to say that I haven't heard of instances or seen things where people are like, the planchette moved on its own. Just leave at that point. Don't, that.
What does that mean?
Well,
it means
that's
that there's
a really strong force.
That's a strong force.
Oh,
I will always say that when
someone out of a door, right?
Yeah, when you're dealing with
Sure,
a
yes.
physical encounter, something that moves, in order for me to move this can, I have to use my muscles, my brain, my bones, and move it. If something else can do that without those traits, I mean, I defy you to move it with your brain. I defy you to blow on it until it goes. Something is using a force that is imperceptible to move a physical item, and now you're dealing with something that could do damage and harm.
Sure.
Because if it can move a little plastic thing, it could, close your windpipe. It can, sever your optic nerves.
Oh my God.
It can, there's so many instances where you're dealing, and those are things like, I imagine at one point we'll get to talking about the damage done by certain spirits or stories where people are like, I witnessed something. I have a friend who saw, and I always say he saw the Mothman, but he refutes that. But he saw two orange eyes in his house.
100%.
And it severed the muscles in his eyes, and so he wears like crazy glasses and had to have surgeries in his eyes, but he remembers the moment that his eyes just went, and mind you, he might just have deep ocular damage, but the fact that it was preceded by seeing these two orange eyes in a dark room, and as he looked at those eyes, he just felt like paralyzed.
Mothman,
No. Now, could that be Mothman trying to warn him?
Oh, I don't know.
That maybe a medical thing is happening?
Perhaps.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Maybe he
It's
came
like,
and was like, oh, by the way, something wrong with your eyes, kid.
Because I don't think Mothman's. I don't think Mothman. I know that's not what the episode's about, but like,
I don't think
I
it
just
was.
don't think Mothman's gonna be able to be like,
I don't think it was Mothman doing the damage. I think it was the interaction causing some physical remnants.
Like a big happy dog that knocks things off tables.
We're big into talking about the dogs knocking into people.
I relate everything to dogs. They're my favorite.
Well, I think that is fair when you think of a dog as a force of energy. If it comes running up to you and knocks you over,
sure,
it's not because it's trying to hurt you.
It
just
because
doesn't.
It loves you too much,
and it doesn't understand
its size.
Right. The confines of its power.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, oh gosh, I can't stop thinking about Mothman being like.
The description that he gave was that he was looking in a room and he thought it was the alarm clock, the digital alarm clock. So he just sees these two like little reddish lights.
Sure.
But as he looked at it, it became more like balls, and then he determined that it was eyes.
Goodness.
And then he said that the muscles in his eyes just gave out, and one eye went one direction and the other eye went the other direction.
Oh my Lord!
So he got like.
Did he play with Ouija boards?
No, he was just a kid
just
in Brunswick,
living his
Georgia.
life.
Oh my God!
Oh my gosh!
Wow, that's a creepy story. Do you still know him?
I do know him. I can reach out to him.
Yeah, reach out to him. I'd love to.
I know our viewers are going to be like, part 2?
Yeah, I know.
Part two.
Again, I don't
Yeah.
follow up on these stories, and I never think about it. I never thought,
Yeah.
well, this
That's
one day
creepy.
I'll be on a show and I'll be talking about Josh and his eyes, but here I am.
Yeah, here you are.
Hashtag Josh in his eyes.
Maybe there's like an ocular mythological creature that's like, hey, have you been to the eye doctor recently? Have you got your annual checkup? You should.
It's funny because another person I know who saw red eyes said that every time he blinks, he can still see them. Like when you look at the sun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like it's like a
And-
leftover.
Yeah, like a burn
highlight.
in his
Yeah.
retina. So like when he
That's
blinks, he
crazy.
says he can still see them, and he had to take like a desk job because it would distract him while he was like out and driving and stuff.
Goodness.
So yeah.
All right. So, what is the best way to destroy a Ouija board? I mean, like, let's say one of our listeners is in a real bad place right now. They played with the Ouija board the other night, and now every single night they have, an old lady whispering in their ear really uncomfortable things. I don't know. That just came off the top.
I was gonna say,
don't
once
know.
it's passed from the board,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
you're in a
board
whole
is not.
different
Yeah.
So now
situation.
you have to deal with the problem. It's like the
Yeah.
infestation has started. It's like roaches. It's like don't live in a dirty place if you don't want roaches.
Well, okay, so if we're just going off of, you have a Ouija board that you have identified has a malevolent spirit attached to it, I would definitely go about the route of burial. Usually returning
Or ritual of any
ritual,
type.
yeah, something of that nature, because typically burial is the best way to end a spell, end a curse, end things like that, close that portal for good, because it's what we've identified as, like Chris said, the final stage of life,
Yeah.
final stage of existence is when you are returned to the earth. So go about doing a full burial. I would personally wrap it in some type of cloth or something and then go about burying it. Don't leave a headstone or anything. Don't leave any marker of it. Cover it in some kind of protective herb or something like that, even rosemary.
Speak words
Yeah.
of meaning to you.
Yeah.
And give it to Chris, or give it to Chris, and he'll put it in his trunk. Isn't that right? And
gosh.
Megan won't let him
Maybe
bring
he
it
won't
in.
let me bring it into my house. And it's interesting because I can't tell you how many stories. I'm even privy to a story of a Ouija board finding its way back to its owner after being moved. So nailing it in place might be a case in which they tried to get rid of it and it came back.
Interesting.
Very
And so they're
interesting.
like, well, we're going to get rid of this chest. Let's nail it under here, and it won't find its way back.
Wow.
Kind of an interesting. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, because that story is so common that you're like, well, I'll just get rid of it. I'll sell it. I'll give it away. I'll put it somewhere that it'll never.
Sure.
And then it shows back up at the person's house. So that might be one of the reasons why it's
Well,
nailed under
absolutely.
under the drawer, just to keep it in place.
Well, and I kind of touched on that earlier too, of like people throw it away and they're like, oh, it should be gone for good now because it's going to the landfill. It doesn't work that way. I agree.
And you hear that with haunted dolls too.
Oh, absolutely.
I even think that Annabelle, arguably the most famous haunted doll, part of her story was they tried to get rid of her and she turned
Yep.
back to the house.
Well, Annabelle got to them because somebody was trying to get rid of her. So it's like,
So yeah, there you go. Burial makes sense because it is ritualized and recognized pretty universally by humans as the end of life activity and a measure to put it where it needs to be. Immobilization, just don't destroy it. That's the
Yeah.
big thing. Lots of people want to burn evil things. Burning as an act is an act of release, not an act of binding. You're
Yeah.
not binding something by burning it. You're actually releasing it from the bonds that it has. You're actually burning away the thing that holds it in place. Same with like tearing it up or ripping it apart or breaking
Yeah.
it or anything like that.
Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's true, and it's also there's a lot of intention that goes into burying something.
Absolutely.
And ritual, and same as nailing something, that takes a lot of intention to be like, I am nailing you to this
Right.
thing. Leave me
You
alone.
are staying here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's where it all starts. It starts with intention. It ends with intention. If you have enough conviction to be like, you are staying in this place, you have more, because you are alive and you are a living, breathing entity, spirit, you have more power than anything that can be on that other side. So if you have more conviction, you're going to be in the better side.
Right. People forget quickly that we have sensory dominance. We see, smell, taste, feel. We have sensory dominance in this existence. Any spirit that comes here has to overcome the fact that it has no sensory organs. It has no eyes, no ears, no nose, no mouth. It has none of the things that we use to navigate this plane. So they are facilitating those things. They are utilizing some other sense of this place. They're compensating. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that might mean that they can be perceived as evil, but really they're just clumsy. Really, they're just attempting to exist in this plane. It's funny. We talked about in the last podcast about broken mirrors and 7 years bad luck, and a question that oftentimes comes up is, if a spirit from the other side comes into our world, how long will it last? I was like, if it doesn't have something to attach to, if it's not attached to a person or an item, how long can it be untethered? Oh. And a common belief is that it will last 7 years. That in 7 years' time, it will have lost all ability to maintain itself in our world unless it attaches to something. And so that, I should have said this to answer the question, why 7 years bad luck? The concept being that a spirit is trying to attach to you in desperation of staying in this realm, and it has 7 years to attempt it. And in those 7 years, it will seem as though you have a lot of bad luck because the spirit is desperately trying to maintain its existence here.
I like that answer. That's cool.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that is, like pure old word superstition. Sure. Is that a spirit? Because the other one was a spirit can last as long as its name is carved, that is legible. So like you carve it in stone on a tombstone, and the spirit's ability to present and be around and interact is as long as, well, if it's not connected to somebody, as long as you can read its name on the stone. Sure. Once it's illegible, so is the spirit.
Is it okay to, my next question is it okay to own a Ouija board without using it? It's kind of like, to me, it's like owning a gun, but you don't have to fire it.
I mean, to a certain degree. I mean, if you never open it, but like, what's the point?
Yeah, I was going to say, I will always say don't use a Ouija board. That's the point. But I am also of the mindset that it's a double-edged sword. It's cool. It's cool. It's fun. It's interesting. It is a practicing the recognition that there's more to the universe, and you're admitting it by playing with this board. All of that is positive. I personally do not recommend it, but I'm not overly judgmental of people who do. I don't think that, I don't think there's anything universally wrong with it, but in my experience and from what I've witnessed or heard or collected, it's never been a good idea. It doesn't truly serve a purpose. If you really want to communicate with the other side, find yourself a medium or somebody who has this gift. And the unfortunate part about that is there are many who don't have the gift and think they do. There are many who don't have the gift and just lie about it. So, finding authentic people who have a gift is very difficult. It's very rare. And if you're lucky enough to know somebody, they can help you mitigate spiritual crises and situations.
And I also like to add in too, just for the sake of having it as a decoration, the way we decorate our homes and even the way we dress and things like that is also so intentional, because we're choosing for this to be the way I want to be represented. And I don't know if it's always a great idea to hang something up on your wall that could be used to access you in a way. Like if you hang up a Ouija board on your wall and like, this is decor, but you also still know the spiritual meaning behind it.
Its purpose, yeah.
Yeah, it's it's kind of a weird gray area to it. It's the same idea like with my tarot cards. I wrap them in cloth when I'm done. It's in a cabinet where nobody's seeing it and things like that. It is completely sealed off from being accessible to me. Nothing's getting through. So
I just know myself, and if I'm at a garage sale and I find this is how I'm gonna get in trouble with Madison. Like at one point in our lives, I'm gonna be at a garage sale, and there's gonna be this like old gnarly. Like, Ouija, look at her face. I know you can't see it in the podcast, but I'm getting the death stare. This old, gnarly Ouija, well, she knows me, Ouija board that has, like, raised lettering. And it's just, like, it looks, like, ancient, and it's, like, $5. I'm buying it, and I'm going to get in so much trouble.
It's going to stay in the trunk of your car. I'm telling you, man.
It's true. Well, so actually...
now I get it.
Well, actually, I would like to say, though, I do have haunted objects before, and I'm not a huge fan of owning haunted objects. I have a doll that was my grandmother's doll that stayed at my parents' house because I don't like this doll. I've not liked it my entire life. I chose to leave it in that room for a very particular reason. And one time I brought
the one that I...
Yes.
Oh.
Well, yes. And then
That's
you're
what
coming
you're
into
getting
this
to.
story. So
no.
basically, I took JT to my parents' house one time and he saw the doll and he was like, whoa, this is a creepy doll. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's haunted. It moves. It watches you. It's very freaky. And he goes, well, we're going to take it home with us. I kid you not. Right after we brought it back to Savannah, I was like, it's staying in the back of my car. It's staying in the trunk, like Chris does. I got into an accident right when we got back. Remember when I was driving and I bumped that person?
Yeah.
I don't get into accidents. I'm a very safe driver. But until this doll got into my car, and it's a doll, too, that doesn't like to be hidden. It doesn't like being shut away.
No.
Are you saying I was the cause of your accident, honey?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So don't take JT's advice.
Yes, JT would be the reckless one of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
If
that's
you
true.
see a Ouija board at a garage sale, it's probably there for a reason. I'm just saying. So don't buy it.
And it's interesting because, for the most part, a Ouija board does not have to be this creepy old, janky
absolutely.
wooden thing. The Parker Brothers cardboard one, that's plenty. That's plenty bad.
Yeah. Well, now that we've imparted our wisdom on you about
Ouija Week. This is Ouija Week.
Although we should mention that the name Ouija for the longest time believed to be yes in French and yes in German, oui and ja, because it's Ouija, was actually the name of a spiritualist, Ouida, O-U-I-D-A, that helped inspire the creator of the Ouija board, and she wore a necklace. And I think the name Ouida is actually the spirit guide that this person would communicate with. But I think in the story, he misread it. He thought it said Ouija, but it was a D and not a J. So I wonder if just misnaming the board
it made it
a little, a little sour.
Well, that is actually very
That's
interesting.
Chris's ghost pro tip of the
Yeah,
week.
pro tip of the week: don't misname your ghost.
Your divination tools. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up, but we are going to be back every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday with new episodes on all streaming platforms, so make sure to check us out there. Also, please make sure to follow us on TikTok for more of our creepy stories and content of that nature. We're under The Savannah Underground on TikTok and Just Savannah Underground on Instagram. So if you'd like to follow us there, we highly recommend it. Also, make sure to check out our Patreon for more ghostly content and more exclusive content, including fun merch. So if you're interested in being one of our patrons, we would love to have you. But with that being said, I'm Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And stay spooky, y'all.